Hello and welcome to episode 681 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, as always joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva, and we are on to semifinal week in the fantasy football playoffs. Evan, how's it going?
It's going well. Coming off another very, very busy week, a lot of stuff to get to.
For sure. On today's show, we're going to go team by team through all 32 squads, talking everything we saw in week 15 and what it means going forward. 2 more weeks left in the fantasy football season, but this show will continue each week through the conference championship games. Before we get into it here today, 2 things. First, we are running a Christmas sale for Establish the Run NBA. Again, if you're interested in basketball, in the NBA, in playing fantasy, in playing DFS specifically for the NBA, 25% off Christmas sale starts tomorrow, December 20th, and will run for a limited time. Head to EstablishTheRun.com, the subscribe tab, click NBA for more details on that. Also, the playoff-only best ball contest tournaments on Underdog are heating up big time. This isn't like a player take tournament. It is a strategy take tournament, understanding which teams can play each other, which teams can play each other in the Super Bowl, how to make a team that is live in the final to win the prize. And I would say like 30 to 50% of the teams are almost stone dead in that playoff only tournament. I believe it's called the Gauntlet on Underdog. So check that out for sure. We do have a strategy article by Herzig up about it. If you do not have an Underdog fantasy account yet, promo code ETR when you sign up at Underdog for matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at UnderdogFantasy.com. All right, Evan, we'll start with the 5 biggest stories from week 15. First biggest story has to be the Chargers meltdown. And look, they were without Justin Herbert. They were without Mike Williams. They're without Keenan Allen in this game. But they were down 42-0 on Thursday night, national television game, to the Las Vegas Raiders. Let me repeat that. They were down 42-0 at halftime to the Raiders. This is the ultimate humiliation. The very next day, they fire both Brandon Staley, the coach, and Tom Telesco, the GM. You know, we've come on here before and said when guys got fired that they didn't have enough of a chance. It wasn't really their fault. Brandon Staley, who I thought was a really sharp guy, I mean, some of the stuff he's done over the last 1, 2, 3 years has been a disaster. They have been so bad in one-score games. I thought he had to go. Telesco probably had to go also. Evan, what was your reaction to the cleaning of the house for the Chargers?
They had to go. I mean, national TV embarrassment. You know, they just have been such a hard luck franchise. But I agree with you on Brandon Staley that I thought he was a sharp hire at the beginning, and he made a lot of smart moves in the beginning, I thought. And then it's almost like he went on tilt and he started making really bad decisions. I don't know. He started to get have an attitude with the media, and the media isn't even really hard on the Chargers. So I don't know. It was a very disappointing tenure for Brandon Staley. I do think that he will resurface as, you know, a potentially sharp defensive coordinator hire, but the Chargers need to, you know, they got a lot of work to do. I mean, they also fired Tom Telesco, who I thought he did a good job, especially in the draft. Mm-hmm. But he got so much rope. I mean, he was there for a really long time, and they never really accomplished anything.
The interim coach will be Giff Smith. Giff Smith is a 55-year-old guy, was the outside linebackers coach. Is he a defensive guy like Staley was? But Giff Smith does not have a lot of leading experience. He has never even been a defensive coordinator in his career. So he's got a tall task ahead of him because I don't know if Keenan Allen wants to come back to this situation. He was sat out with a heel issue, and Easton Stick did not look like he was ready to play. Any thoughts on the way Easton Stick looked in the Chargers going forward now?
I was disappointed because I was on his rushing over because he was like a big-time runner in college at North Dakota State, but he only ran 2 times for 11 yards. He wound up with pretty good stats in the end, a lot of garbage time production. But yeah, I'm not too excited about him. The offense will stay the same. Kellen Moore will continue to run the offense. But I mean, they're on their last legs. Justin Herbert not coming back, and I agree with you. Maybe Keenan Allen might not come back either. I mean, they've been officially eliminated
Yep.
Yeah, so there's really no reason for Keenan Allen to come back and play. He may come back and play just because he's a competitor.
Yep.
But they play on Saturday night this week, I believe.
Keenan, I think, on a long week, if it was a normal week, I would say, yeah, he'll be back. But I don't know at this point. Eckler, though, he's a guy that's still fighting for money, for contract. Does he really want to go out there and put more touches on his body? So it's just a bad setup right now for Eckler and Keenan. The good news was Josh Palmer finally got back, ran 30 out of 36 routes. He only saw 4 targets from Easton Stick for a 12.5% share. But he caught that one crazy long play, 4 catches, 113-1. So good to have Josh Palmer back. If Keenan's out, obviously Mike Williams is out. I mean, Josh Palmer's going to get fed for sure. Bills. Huge game for the playoff hopes for the Bills. In our second biggest story, they host the Cowboys here, and they get it done easily in a game that Josh Allen attempted 15 passes. Again, Josh Allen attempted 15 passes, and they won 31-10 over Dallas. They did it with the run game. James Cook, and we've been talking a lot about James Cook, how his role has been better in the pass game under Joe Brady. This careering it from a rushing perspective, though, was not something that I saw coming. Just a massive James Cook game. Evan, any thoughts on the Bills' performance here and James Cook stuff going forward?
Well, it was really impressive how the Bills just blew the Cowboys off the ball. Now, the Cowboys were missing Jonathan Hankins. We actually talked about this on Friday. And you remember maybe like a month ago, I mentioned how Brian Broaddus, who used to work for the Cowboys and still covers them, he was talking about how if a team could stick to the run against the Cowboys, and oftentimes they can't because the Cowboys blow teams out, if they can stick to the run, like you can run on the Cowboys. Cowboys are very aggressive. Again, they didn't have Hankins. The Bills had an 84% run block win rate, and James Cook averaged over 4 yards before contact in this game. And I also thought it was interesting how Joe Brady, when asked, was this the game plan to feature James Cook and like essentially just have Josh Allen handing off the ball the entire game, and he said no, but we showed signs of having success with this early in the game. And he said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he just rode James Cook the entire way. Now, James Cook, his usage has really skyrocketed under Joe Brady in 4 games. And I mean, James Cook has become like a legitimate big-time weapon. And right now, this Bills team, I mean, they look as complete as it gets. And I'm loving your 90-1 exacta and loving my 50-1 Bills to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Bills next 2 games, and Bills are very much live now to win the division, to get into the playoffs. They play Easton Stick this week, then Bailey Zappi the week after that, and then they finish with what could be a huge game against the Dolphins in week 18. I will note on James Cook stuff, it's awesome. They still brought in Latavius for the goal line TD, So, just be aware of that with James Cook. Latavius is going to play. Ty Johnson's going to play. But, man, this was an incredible career performance for James Cook, who's obviously an awesome fantasy asset right now. Third biggest story of the week comes from Cincinnati, where we had Jake Browning going off again, this time against the Vikings defense that's been playing really well. I mean, Jake Browning over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in an overtime win. The story, though, Jamar Chase separated his shoulder, will be out for week 16 against the Steelers and probably more. And in conjunction with that, we got T. Higgins with another, he only made a couple plays in that first game back. He looked all the way back here. Really good touchdown catch for T. Higgins. We have some very stark splits for T. Higgins when Jamar Chase is out. So T. Higgins in best ball stuff in playoffs looks really good right now. Evan, any thoughts on Jake Browning's latest victory and Bengals going forward without Jamar Chase?
Over the last 3 weeks, Jake Browning has been the number 4 overall fantasy quarterback, the number 4 overall fantasy quarterback, and the number 9 overall fantasy quarterback. Now, pulling Jamar Chase out of the lineup, I mean, that's, I think, a significant concern for him. But I don't know how you did it, man. But, you identified after 8 NFL completions, you identified future All-Pro Jake Browning, and he's been sticking it to me the entire time because I made fun of you for it. But, yeah, T. Higgins in the number 1 receiver role. We'll talk about that on Friday. He's probably going to have to go up against Joey Porter Jr., the Steelers' top corner, who's been playing really well. But the Bengals are like very, very live for the playoffs. I mean, I think that they're in right now if the season were to end today.
Yeah. An interesting note in the backfield for Cincy, which is another reason I wanted to highlight this. The opportunities in this game were Joe Mixon 13, Chase Brown 10, Travion Williams 2. And that includes Chase Brown leaving the game in the third quarter to go to the medical tent to get checked for something. I don't know what. Returned in the fourth and looked fine. I guess my point is that where Joe Mixon's biggest attribute over the last couple of years has been extreme volume, Chase Brown's starting to cut into it now, and starting to cut into it more and more. So we're going to have a lighter projection on Mixon here, have that gap tighter between Chase Brown and Joe Mixon coming up this week.
Yeah, and Chase Brown has also made taken incremental steps towards just being like a more all-around player. Remember when he started in his first game, he had 9 carries on 11 snaps. They've shown more willingness to use him in the passing game. And I think that if he had been healthy for this entire game, we wouldn't have seen much of Travion Williams. It would have just been a 2-man backfield of Joe Mixon and Chase Brown. And I think that there is a chance that by the end of the season, like Chase Brown can make it a near 50-50 thing.
Yeah. I don't think that's crazy either. They don't seem to trust him very much in the pass game at all. Like Evan said, he only ran, I don't have it in front of me here, but he only ran like a fistful of routes in this game. But still, as a runner, he clearly gives them way more juice than Joe Mixon right now. Last note I had on Cincy, shout out team preseason, Tanner Hudson, another 5 catches. He's now at 25.8% targets per route run on 151 routes this year. I mean, Tanner Hudson is earning routes at a really high clip. For comparison's sake, George Kittle's only at 21% targets per route run. Again, Tanner Hudson up close to 26%. So just something to keep in mind there. Colts. So Colts get an easy win here over the hapless Steelers. The concern is that Michael Pittman left with a concussion. Zach Moss left with an arm issue, but I don't know how they did it. You got a big game from DJ Montgomery, who also dropped a touchdown. You got a touchdown from Mo Alley Cox. You got Trey Sermon looking good and Tyler Goodson looking good after Zach Moss went down. So Colts just keep putting together good performances. I do think hopefully we'll get Michael Pittman cleared on a longish week for them, or at least a 1-day longer week for them. But yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Colts' latest win this time over the Steelers?
Well, their run game has just been kicking butt all year. It doesn't even matter really who. Well, Deion Jackson can get it done, but it doesn't really matter the identity of their running backs. Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, these 2 guys that they used this past week, they have been kicking butt. Quentin Nelson, Bernard Raymond, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith. Their offensive line has been really, really good. Shane Steichen, very live for NFL Coach of the Year, I think.
Yeah.
At this point, they still use 4 tight ends on a weekly basis. We saw Will Mallory have a nice game last week, or the week before. This past week, he was 4th in line in the tight end rotation. We'll have to see on Michael Pittman. Suffered a second quarter concussion. Josh Downs stayed in the slot, and then DJ Montgomery came in and made a couple plays.
Yeah, at the Falcons this week. So you get a dome game here between the Falcons and Colts, obviously, in week 16 on Christmas Eve. We'll see on the status of JT, by the way. They didn't put JT on IR, which made me think he wasn't going to miss the full 4 weeks. I believe he's missed 3 now. So I kind of think that JT has a pretty decent chance to be back this week, but we'll see. 5th and final biggest story of the week comes from Miami, where I thought Tyreek Hill would play in that game and Devon Achane would sit against the Jets. Turns out Tyreek is the one who sits. Achane plays. Now, of course, when you play Zach Wilson's Jets, you can roll even without Tyreek, and that is what happened. They were up 24-0 at half. Really disappointing for Cedric Wilson. I thought Cedric Wilson would have a version of the Tyreek Hill role and be able to do something. He did absolutely nothing, 2 short catches. But the guy who benefited was obviously Jalen Waddle. I mean, we've seen this over and over again, where anytime Tyreek is even just off the field to get checked or resting or whatever, immediately the first look is Jalen Waddle, and it's been productive. So big Jalen Waddle game here, Evan. The Achane usage was a little bit disappointing. Did not get the garbage time stuff like he's gotten before. What do you think of Miami's rolling of the Jets?
Got to think that Mike McDaniel is going to look at that tape of the Bills against Dallas, and potentially attack them big time with Raheem Mostert, who has 20 touchdowns,
Crazy.
and Devin Achane. I think one thing interesting. So on Sunday morning, we got a question about, it was something like Jalen Waddle. Oh, so with Tyreek out, will Jalen Waddle see more of Sauce Gardner? And that's just kind of not how it works against the Jets. Jalen Waddle wound up running 10 routes against DJ Reed and 9 routes against Sauce Gardner. He was not targeted when he ran against Sauce Gardner, and he went 3 for 92 and a touchdown against DJ Reed.
Yeah.
So just another reminder that, those cornerback wide receiver matchups, they can be real, real shaky. And like a lot of teams don't shadow. Like the vast majority of teams don't shadow. The Jets stay on their sides. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed stay on their sides.
Miami has a ton to play for. Like they play the Cowboys and they play the Ravens next. 2 difficult matchups. They're still alive for the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're still fighting for the division. They still, I think, want to get Tyreek Hill 2,000 yards. Now, because he missed this game, that's going to be very difficult. He needs to average 152.6 yards per game over the next 3 to hit his stated goal of 2,000. But not impossible, but seems really unlikely at this point. Ton of real life stuff to play for the Dolphins.
We should note that Tua had an awesome game here with so many factors working against him, playing against the Jets. Offensive line extremely banged up. No Tyreek Hill, goes 21 of 24 for 224 yards, 9.3 yards per pass attempt, and a touchdown. Continues to have an excellent season. I mean, he's had some down games, over the course of the year, but I mean, so many things working against him for him to have a game like that. Really impressive.
Yeah, people say, oh, he's been shredding only in easy matchups. This was not an easy matchup. There was some weather. He had no Tyreek, and he's still shredded. And the Jets have a very, very good defense and pass defense. All right. Let's go to the NFC now. We'll go alphabetical and start with Arizona. Obviously, they were completely dead against the 49ers, but man, Trey McBride, this guy is like saving so many of my best ball and season-long teams since Zach Ertz went down in week 7. Trey Gronkowski, aka Trey McBride, has played in 7 games. His 17-game pace is 123, 13, 16, 5. I mean, just cannot ask for anything more out of fantasy tight end. His underlying metrics are at par with elite wide receivers right now. But yeah, that's the obvious one. Evan, anything on the Cardinals for you after they got smoked by the 49ers?
Yeah, I would just say that this Cardinals wide receiver situation, I mean, and I feel like we talk about it every week in terms of DFS because the dudes are cheap.
Yeah.
It's like almost never worth investing in.
Yeah. Wiggins took an air ball from Michael Wilson in the live final. I know. Yep. Pain. Michael Wilson did have a couple end zone targets, but alas, it's Michael Wilson, and he did not come down with them. Atlanta. This was a game that was affected by weather. You guys know me. I think the weather stuff is completely overblown, but this was a game that looked like it would be affected by weather, and it was. It was raining pretty hard the entire time. It was a bit windy, but still, for the Falcons to lose to the 1-11 Panthers in a game that Bijan Robinson gets just 7 of 26 running back carries and catches 1 of 3 targets for 3 yards is just mind-blowing. And in my opinion, should be fireable offense for Arthur Smith. Now, it's not going to happen. But yeah, this was a really, really bad loss for a team that was still very much in the playoff hunt. Now they find themselves behind the Saints and the Bucks in the NFC South. Evan, what do you think of Falcons' meltdown at Carolina?
Yeah, just such a horrible loss. And I think it was shocking. Not really as shocking in hindsight, but shocking in the moment that the Falcons were just unable to run the ball against Carolina because pretty much everyone's been able to run the ball against Carolina. I say it's not as shocking in hindsight because the Falcons were without Chris Lindstrom, who might be the best guard in the NFL, Andrew Dahlman, their starting center, and Caleb McGarry has been beat up, and Jake Matthews has been beat up. So it's not as surprising in hindsight, but almost half of the Falcons' runs in this game went for 0 yards or negative yards. I mean, they got blown off the ball
Yeah.
by the Panthers defensive front. And to your point about Bijan, it's just ridiculous that Bijan Robinson will get that light of a workload.
Yeah.
Tyler Algier, doubled him up in carries in this game.
And people say, oh, Bijan fumbled. Bijan fumbled with 1 minute left in the third quarter. At that time, he was already behind Algier, and CPAT already had 6 carries. Like, it's like there's just no excuse for the way that they're using Bijan. By the way, they're going back to Taylor Heineke, just grasping at straws. I think, God, I don't even know what I think. Do you think Ritter or Heineke gives them a better chance to win? And do you think Ritter or Heineke is better for fantasy? I haven't thought about this enough.
I mean, I'll try to look for a trend when I write them up this week, but I would be surprised if I found any helpful trend. I mean, no, they're going to play the same style of offense regardless of which quarterback is under center. And when we saw Taylor Heineke in there earlier this year, I mean, it wasn't positive.
It was not good. And they went back to Ritter pretty quickly. Carolina, we just mentioned, they get their second win here with 3 field goals over the Falcons to beat them 9-7. Defense was excellent in ugly conditions. I know, Evan, we talked about that Sunday morning. You were on Panthers defense a little bit in the rain with some young, talented pieces against Ritter. That turned out to be a good hit. But yeah, not a lot to add on Carolina. It just is what it is at this point. Anything for you on the Panthers?
I think that the one thing that would stand out would be, the continued force feeding of Chuba Hubbard by Thomas Brown. He got 24 more touches. Not a dynamic player, but I think at this point, a guy that you can rely on for big workloads week to week. Chuba Hubbard, Thomas Brown loves this guy.
Yeah, 24 opportunities for Chuba, 8 for Miles here. And yeah, the Jonathan Mingo stuff, I know I don't want to make like sweeping decisions or opinions about anyone playing in this Carolina offense, in this scheme and everything, but it just has not been good for Mingo from like any underlying perspective. I'm not going to write him off because it's the Panthers and he could easily be better in a better situation, but just does not look good right now for Mingo. Bears. I mean, we knew this was going to be a tough spot playing the Browns in Cleveland, and we saw Justin Fields kind of turtle up against the Vikings a few weeks ago. Browns defense was all over Justin Fields here, 19 of 40 passing for Fields, and he only ran 7 times for 30 yards. So against these good defenses, I have concerns about Justin Fields. When he plays teams like the Lions, it's completely wheels up for Justin Fields. What do you think of Bears' performance out there in Cleveland?
Well, the Browns pressured Justin Fields on 20 of 45 dropbacks, and that stat sounds really, really rough. I think it's like almost half of his dropbacks. But man, this guy holds onto the ball too long. He does not. I mean, he's been in the league 3 years now. He does not have the ability to make consistent, quick decisions. I mean, that is not part of his game. And I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah, and he thinks that the Bears are going to trade Justin Fields after this season. And I would say that is maybe, I don't want to use the word cemented, but I would say that is underlined maybe by the fact that they are going to fire the coaching staff. And I wonder if Ryan Poles will get another year as GM. My lean would be that he will, but usually GMs don't get to hire multiple coaches. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys that were theoretically in Justin Fields' camp, in his camp on his side, that are not going to be with the organization anymore. And that would lead me to believe that Jeremiah's prediction is correct, that they are going to trade Fields.
I mean, it's no brainer to me. You get the quarterback, reset the clock on the quarterback contract with Caleb Williams, whoever you want to take. By the way, though, they have the Panthers pick, obviously. Panthers winning that game is scary for the Bears because now the Panthers have 2 wins. New England has 3 wins. Arizona has 3 wins. So, yeah, it's not like a lock that they're going to have number 1 pick here. They need Carolina to lose the rest of their games.
A couple more notes. Bears had 10 third down snaps of 3rd and 7 or longer in this game and went 0 for 10. The Bears have now lost 3 games this season when leading by 10-plus points in the fourth quarter. They, flip a couple coins and they could be like 8-5 right now.
Yeah.
But they also haven't shown the ability to put teams away, and and all that. And again, like Fields, he does a lot of positive things, and he also does a lot of negative things.
Yeah. My only note, last note here on Chicago, I talked about how it's like Fields is really matchup sensitive. Home versus Arizona this week, and then home versus Atlanta in week 17. I mean, pretty good spots for Justin Fields these last 2 games of the fantasy season. Let's go to Dallas. Big test for the Cowboys up in Buffalo, and they fail miserably. They lose 31-10. They were down 21-3 at halftime. Dak just, after being so hot for so long, 134 pass yards on 34 attempts. Complete faceplant here, Evan. I know you have the Dak MVP ticket. Bad for you, but good for me since I have the Purdy MVP long shot ticket. But yeah, really ugly Dak game here. What'd you think of Dallas's performance up in Buffalo?
So we earlier talked about how the Cowboys got gashed on the run by James Cook and Buffalo. Offensively, they weren't there either, and that I think it begins with the loss of Zach Martin, who left during the game with a quad injury. My guess is that he's going to miss some time, but it was still surprising because the Bills defensively have struggled to generate pressure all season, and all of a sudden, like their defense came alive. And they've actually been playing better defensively, but it was just a horrible, horrible game from Dallas. And they get Miami next, and Miami has been playing unbelievable defense.
Yeah.
So this is gonna. I'm worried about the Dak tickets after being in love with them last week.
Yeah, I'm not like panicking on Dak and CD stuff generally, but yeah, he could not keep playing at the level that he was playing at for the whole year. And sometimes when you go on the road to Buffalo, go on the road to Miami, it's going to look a lot tougher. I will note that Dallas in fantasy championship week 17, is home against the Lions. I mean, other than the Commanders and teams like that, I mean, home versus the Lions is an amazing spot for Dak and everyone.
And that is that's an island game too.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the game of the fantasy championship week will be Dallas Detroit. Speaking of the Lions, they got an easy win on, I guess that was Saturday night. They exposed the Broncos. I mean, just exposed them massively. Everyone went off for the Lions. Jared Goff threw 5 touchdowns. Sam Laporta scored 3 touchdowns on just 6 targets. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big game. Gibbs had a big game. Even Jameson Williams earned 7 targets, which was a good sign considering he's been struggling to earn targets. So it was like a sell the Broncos at their peak and buy the Lions at their low point in hindsight. Awesome game for Lions. What do you think of them against the Broncos?
Jahmyr Gibbs, over his last 8 games, averaging 17 touches for 105 yards and a touchdown over an 8-game stretch. That's big time. Over 100 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown to be able to do that long. I mean, he's been a huge difference maker in fantasy. Mm-hmm. Also a huge difference maker. The week before, Frank Ragnow missed. He comes back, and their offense just goes off against a Denver defense that's been playing pretty darn well. Mm-hmm. Frank Ragnow, huge difference maker on the interior. I like to see that Jameson Williams got 7 targets. They said he couldn't do it. They said it couldn't be done. He played as the number 2 receiver over Josh Reynolds. Only went 4 for 47, but
yeah,
his role continues to be on the rise.
And they were like force feeding it to him too. He's not like Marvin Mims where they're, well, he's out there, but we're not throwing it. They were force feeding it to Jameson. So hopefully it's coming soon.
He needs the ball Waymo.
At the Vikings this week for Detroit in an NFC North game. Packers, so no Christian Watson here in this game, no A.J. Dillon in this game, but it was really the defense, I thought, that let the Packers down as they lose a really big game to the Bucs. I mean, they let Baker Mayfield go off on them and Rachaad White go off. The Packers are now 6-8, drawing thin for the playoffs. They don't even have the tiebreak over the Falcons at this point. From a fantasy perspective, I thought Aaron Jones looked healthy, but only managed 69 yards on 17 opportunities. And then the worst news we got in this game, Evan, Jaden Reed is such a big part of so many of my teams. He had a good game here, but hurt his toe late. I haven't seen an update, but I'm worried. I need him badly. Or Christian Watson. Just one of these 2 guys I need badly. But anyways, Evan, what do you see out of Bucs loss to the Packers loss to the Bucs?
Well, Dontavian Wicks came into the game very questionable with an ankle injury. Wound up going 6 for 97, on 7 targets. I mean, the passing game played pretty well. I mean, after a couple of down weeks. So got to be encouraged by that. But yeah, I mean, it was the defense. Baker Mayfield shredded them. He had a perfect passer rating in this game and was PFF's #1 overall rated quarterback on the week. Their defense and Matt LaFleur had to come out and reaffirm that Joe Barry is still the Packers defensive coordinator. That probably pissed off the fan base.
They play at the Panthers this week, so Joe Barry's going to look good. I mean, he's going to look good. He's playing the Panthers, and the offense, the entire offense should look good. So really got to pay close attention to injuries here this week because Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, AJ Dillon, all these guys I would consider questionable right now. I do think that with Luke Musgrave out, you see Tucker Kraft, like, it's not really a downgrade. I mean, Tucker Kraft can play. Tucker Kraft has the exact same role as Luke Musgrave did, so clearly he can have big games. Rams. Predictably, a big day for Matthew Stafford here. I mean, when you play the Commanders in a dome, you're going to be efficient passing the football. Matthew Stafford was 25 of 33 for 258, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Final score with this game seemed close, 28-20, but it was not this close. They brought in Brissett for garbage time, and he threw a couple bombs, including one to McLaurin. But yeah, usage here remains very predictable. Kyron's going to be the feature back. Puka, Kupp, and either Demarcus Robinson or Tutu Atwell. I think Tutu's cleared for this week, will be the number 3. And Higbee's back too. So, I mean, we know exactly what we're getting from the Rams every week. Evan, any thoughts for you on the Rams?
Yeah, McVay confirmed that Tutu will be back this week. So, he had kind of fallen into a rotation with Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably going to continue. Kyron Williams, 32 touches. That's his most of the season.
Yeah.
Royce Freeman only had 6 in this game. Kyron Williams, absolute beast. And the Rams running game as a unit will also benefit from Rob Havenstein coming back. He missed this game with the groin, and Kyron still went off.
By the way, Kyron fumbled twice, and they still lost, just fumbles, lost 2 fumbles, and they still went back to him. I mean, they just love this kid. Love at all costs, no matter what. They're all in on Kyron, home versus the Saints, and then at the Giants next for the Rams. Vikings lost a wild one on Saturday in Cincy. They gave up 21 fourth quarter points to Jake Browning, lost in overtime. Big fantasy story was, we've been calling for it all year, and I liked Madison before the year, fine, but I still wanted them to give Ty Chandler a chance, especially after Madison was struggling so bad. And lo and behold, and I understand it's the Bengals. I understand TJ Reader got hurt or whatever, but Chandler looked better than Madison or Akers has looked all year. He got 23 out of 24 running back carries. He saw a 12% target share. He touched the ball 26 times, racked up over 150 yards. I mean, it doesn't seem like Madison was really capable of that. So I'm hopeful that they stick with Chandler in this role going forward, even if Madison gets cleared. Evan, what do you think of Nick Mullins and the Vikings loss to the Bengals?
Yeah, Nick Mullins is holding it together. I mean, he's playing pretty well right now. And, again, this is like just such a quarterback-friendly system and offense with the offensive line healthy and Justin Jefferson back and Jordan Addison balling and TJ Hawkinson balling. Quarterbacks are going to have success in this environment. Mm-hmm. Justin Jefferson talked after the game about how, or I think it was actually on Monday, about how he's been getting a lot of double teams. Other dudes are stepping up. Addison had 111 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Hawkinson 6 for 63. Ty Chandler 26 touches, 157 yards, and a touchdown. I like to hear after the game Kevin O'Connell talking about Ty Chandler. Even if Madison comes back this week, this was the quote: Ty Chandler is absolutely a guy that is going to see a featured role in our offense. Using the words absolutely and saying featured twice. I like to hear that from the coach.
Well, what's he been waiting for? I mean, Madison's been running in quicksand all year. I mean, what are you waiting for, dude? It's crazy.
Right.
I did think Justin Jefferson looked really healthy. He had the hamstring thing, had the chest thing a couple weeks ago, but he looked healthy here, 784-0 on 10 targets from Mullins.
Ty Chandler is also like the kind of back that you want to use in more of like a pass-oriented offense. You play in a dome. Get that speed out on the track, man. Sure. I mean, Ty Chandler like theoretically on paper is just a really good fit, a much better fit than like a plotter like Alexander Madison.
Saints. So no Chris Olave here, no Michael Thomas. Rashid Shaheed came back but didn't do much. Really, the Saints just relied on the Giants sucking, and that's what the Giants did. Now, Derek Carr did throw 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, but it wasn't like a blow the doors off performance by the Saints by any stretch. It was just a really tough spot for the Giants on a short week off that crazy emotional Tommy DeVito win at MetLife the week before. They just didn't show up for the game, and so you get an easy Saints win here. Evan, anything for you on Saints stuff?
Was just a little bit disappointed that Taysom didn't get much work.
He must have still been hurt.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he had 2 touches and a pass attempt. I don't know. He's obviously a really hard guy to predict week to week because, I mean, he's had games where he had 15 touches and then he has 2 here.
Giants in that game was a really tough spot. As I mentioned, you guys aren't going to believe this, but Tommy DeVito, is not it no matter what it seems like when he has, some of these crazy wins. I even think I saw Dable say they might go to Tyrod Taylor going forward. We'll see. I don't think that they will, though. There's too much buzz around Tommy DeVito. Was good to see Darren Waller back. He didn't need to come back, but Darren Waller did come back, ran 22 routes on 45 plus quarterback. Dropbacks here looked reasonably healthy. Evan, what do you think of Giants down there in New Orleans?
Had some hopes for Saquon Barkley that, the Saints have been getting crushed by the run lately, and he just didn't get the ball. They fell behind, big time, wound up losing 24-6, and Saquon wound up he had 11 touches in this game. They have the Eagles coming up next.
Speaking of the Eagles, I mean, that game last night was absolutely insane. I could not believe on those last drives, some of the catches that DK Metcalf made. And then that last catch, the touchdown, the game winner to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the rain. I mean, Locke hits him perfectly, but on the fingertips. I don't even know how JSN caught it and got his feet in. Just an unbelievable comeback and win for the Seahawks. But this is another loss for the Eagles, who have now lost 3 straight. Jalen Hurts came into the game very sick. It seemed like was actually questionable. He struggled as a passer, but looked pretty good as a runner. Have concerns about the Eagles, though, on a bunch of different levels right now. Evan, what do you think of their performance last night out in Seattle?
Well, Jalen Hurts wound up with a good fantasy game because of the tush push and because of 82 rushing yards. But that passing game, that's the worst performance, I think, of the season. And they were going up against a very banged up Seattle pass defense that was without Devin Witherspoon and without Jamal Adams, although that might be a positive. But man, Jalen Hurts I feel like he's developing bad habits where he kind of runs horizontally and tries to make a throw on the run. Sometimes it works, but it leads to a lot of disjointed plays. I thought that DeAndre Swift looked pretty good in the game, but he didn't rip any big plays, and that this has been a Seattle defense that you can run on. So I think in totality, it was a pretty disappointing effort. Well, extremely disappointing effort from the Eagles offense.
Yeah. I will say this, though. We've been pointing towards this final 2 games, and really final 3 games, but final 2 games for fantasy people for a while. Eagles schedule fantasy semifinals, home against the Giants, fantasy championship, home against the Cardinals. I mean, tough to draw it up better than that for Eagles guys. And so if you got Eagles stuff through in best ball or in season long, I think it's set up really, really well for them to come out and have a really good performance against the Giants here coming up.
Jalen Hurts went into the game looking really sick.
Yeah.
Legitimately sick. They were showing pictures of him on the sideline, and he didn't look good. And I thought he played at times like he was sick. So hopefully he'll be healthier for their final few games.
49ers put 45 points on the Cardinals. Another insanely efficient game for your MVP favorite, Brock Purdy. 16 completions for 242 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Brock Purdy is now minus 200 in a lot of spots to be the MVP. What's interesting is the second choice is Lamar Jackson right now. They play each other on Christmas night, Lamar Jackson versus Brock Purdy. If Purdy wins that game, I feel like it might be over. It might be Purdy's award. If Lamar wins it, I think it gets more wide open. Then you could make a case for Lamar. You can make a long shot case for Josh Allen if he wins out. Maybe you can make a case for Tyreek if he has some really big games down the stretch. Purdy is shilling for Christian McCaffrey to be the MVP. So, it's still wide open, but Purdy is, I think, deservedly so, the favorite right now. I know a lot of other people disagree. But anyways, Evan, what do you think of San Francisco's latest steamrolling this time of the Cardinals?
Before we get to my notes, so there are 3 games on Monday this week. Okay. And the 49ers are playing the Ravens in the last one.
Yep. One of the games of the year.
Yeah. That's going to be freaking huge.
Yeah.
I can't. There's no consistency on the week-to-week schedules, so I'm still like trying to take it in at all times. Yeah, I saw Purdy at -190, -200 now to win NFL MVP. The Cardinals did not blitz Brock Purdy on a single snap in Week 15. I mean, the offense is terrifying because you try to drop guys into coverage and he still smokes you.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey has 20 touchdowns in 14 games. Juwan Jennings suffered a concussion. He's been a useful role player for them, but say it every week, when this team is healthy, they are unstoppable. And they'll be going up against the one of the best defense in the league in Baltimore this week. So, this will be a strength on strength.
Yeah.
Game.
49ers are a 5.5 point favorite in that game right now. I mean, they just look like the best team in the NFL by such a wide margin right now due to the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, by the way, 44 DraftKings points. Just ho-hum, another 44 ball. Like, so crazy what he's doing. Seattle, insane win last night, as I just mentioned. The difference between Drew Lock and Geno Smith, like, it's insulting to Geno, I think, a little bit, but it's not that big of a drop-off, I don't think. I'm curious what you think about that, Evan. And then the other note that I had was I thought Kenneth Walker was awesome in this game. Like, people talk about Kenneth Walker's success rate and 2 boom bust. Guy sheds people. I mean, he sheds people, and you can just see it with your eyes. He ended up with 22 opportunities to Zach Charbonnet's 5 and probably deserved it. Evan, what do you think of Drew Lock, Kenneth Walker, and anything else on Seattle?
I think Geno Smith is better than Drew Lock. But Drew Lock has played a couple decent games.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that he played well throughout this game, but I mean, obviously he made that massive throw late. I mean, he's got ability. He was a 2nd-round pick. He was a big-time player at Mizzou, but he's just super, super inconsistent. And I do think that Geno is better. Kenneth Walker, his combination of like explosiveness and the effort that he runs with, he's a high-intensity runner. I mean, I think that he's like pretty clearly better than Zach Charbonnet, and I think that Charbonnet is a solid back, but I think that Kenneth Walker just brings a different, moves at a different speed, moves at a different pace than Zach Charbonnet.
Let's go to Tampa. So Bucs stay very much alive to win the NFC South by going to Lambeau and putting 34 on the Packers. The usage in Tampa, we mentioned this the last couple of weeks. It's just very, very predictable in terms of who's going to be out there and how much. What wasn't predictable this week was just out of stone cold nowhere. Chris Godwin goes full babies in the bottoms, 10-155-0 on 12 targets, 43% target share for Chris Godwin, which I went to bat an eye at last year or the year before. He's been like invisible for 14 weeks, and then he just shows up in week 15 and goes nuclear. I don't really know where that came from whatsoever, but yeah, Evan, anything for you on the Bucs win up there in Lambeau?
Yeah, gosh, this is like the story of my DFS season, like being on a guy and then he goes off the next week after I play him. And that's Chris Godwin. They have another awesome matchup. The Jags are getting destroyed in the middle of the field, and that's where Chris Godwin roams. So I think he's got a chance at another big game. He has 23 targets over the past 2 weeks. Rachaad White continues to be the workhorse, 23 touches against Green Bay.
Yeah. Chris Godwin's wife went ham on the Bucs, Dave Canales, on Instagram or something like that. And since then, Godwin's been getting fed, man. So don't say, you get squeaky wheel in a lot of places. Maybe you get it from your wife. You never know. Squeaky wheel.
Sir.
Last NFC team is the Washington football team. They went out to LA, got down big to the Rams. Howell leaves the game. He's still going to be the starter, but he got removed from this game. Jacoby Brissett tries to mount this crazy late comeback through Terry McLaurin, but was not enough. The disappointing part to me here wasn't even Howell, wasn't, any of the receivers. They all are fine. The disappointing part to me was Antonio Gibson usage, specifically in the second half. I don't know why. They went away from Gibson in the second half. He ended up with only 18 routes in this game. Chris Rodriguez, 7, Jonathan Williams, 8. And Gibson only got 9 opportunities in this game, 5 targets, 4 carries. Chris Rodriguez had 10 opportunities. So I knew there was threat, and I thought it was likely that Rodriguez would play. I didn't think that Jonathan Williams would play a bunch also. So a little bit frustrating on the Antonio Gibson stuff for me. What do you think of Commanders game out there in LA?
And that was the note that I had, that Jonathan Williams only had 1 touch in the game, but it was still essentially a 3-man backfield. I mean, you definitely would have thought that Antonio Gibson would get that playing time that Jonathan Williams had. I don't, there's not a whole lot to take away from this game. I mean, the 2 big touchdowns from Jacoby Brissett kind of elevated the final production of some of the receivers, but we're moving on.
Yeah, we'll see on Brian Robinson's status. He's been dealing with this hamstring thing. Didn't really practice at all last week, so not optimistic, but we'll see on Brian Robinson. All right, shift over to the AFC now. Already hit 5 AFC teams at the very top. We'll start here with the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens defense dominant in that Sunday night win at Jacksonville. Also, Lamar is a runner. I mean, 97 rush yards here in this game. Going to need a lot more of that if they're going to beat the 49ers, I think, on Christmas night. But the big news, Evan, the sad news is that they lost Keaton Mitchell for the year to an ACL tear. Feel bad for him as a dude. I mean, undrafted free agent, non-guaranteed $600,000 contract. Obviously, $600,000 is an incredible amount of money, but he's given way more than that to the team already as a rookie here. So it just sucks he blew out his ACL. Ravens are going to have to go forward with Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Melvin Gordon. I mean, that is not a great running back room. Evan, any thoughts on Ravens' performance and the Keaton Mitchell fallout?
Yeah, it sounds like Keaton Mitchell might have more than just an ACL. So that does sting. And he was balling in this game. I mean, he had he had almost 90 total yards, rushed 9 times for 73 yards. It was coming along a little bit in the passing game. But yeah, they're going to move forward with Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and maybe Melvin Gordon. Yeah. Not that much fun. Ronnie Stanley is not healthy right now. He had his hands full in this game, but overall, I mean, really, really nice win on the road. Ravens took care of business. Isaiah Likely is a huge factor and an every week starter at this stage of the season. They laughed. They laughed. All right, go ahead. Do your thing.
They laughed at me. I said, if we handcuff Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, we have a top 5 tight end every week. They laughed at me. Guess what? If you have Isaiah Likely, you have a top 5 tight end every week. Dude is just a straight up baller. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, I mean, that's what I was going to say.
All right. I do think that Keaton Mitchell out in their current running back room, Lamar's got to run more. You get into the playoffs, you get into these huge games. Just makes sense for Lamar to run more. So yeah, I think that's something that we can count on. Cleveland. So another game for Joe Flacco, over 300 yards. Another game for Joe Flacco with multiple touchdown passes. Another win for Joe Flacco. Browns are now 9-5 in good shape for the playoffs. You can make a case that Kevin Stefanski, given everything that they've gone through, deserves some consideration for coach of the year, losing Nick Chubb, losing the Deshaun Watson mess. They go to Flacco. I mean, it's been a mess. Anyways, Evan, what do you think of Browns getting a good win over the Bears here?
I mean, the Browns have become a pass-first offense with Joe Flacco at the controls.
Yeah.
How many dropbacks did he have here?
I'm not sure. A ton.
Okay. Yeah. Jeez. 40. He had 48 dropbacks in this game. And that's really good news for Amari Cooper and David Njoku. And I read some comments after the game from Joe Flacco talking about David Njoku. And these are not words that you would have associated with David Njoku early in his career. Reliable, consistent, loves throwing to him like a security blanket. I mean, David Njoku has been going off here for a couple of weeks in a row. But both of them, Amari and Njoku, went for over 100 yards. I think that with all the dudes that they lost, and they're down to their fourth and fifth offensive tackles.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their fourth quarterback. I almost forgot about Nick Chubb, that they lost him so long ago. Kevin Stefanski, I think, should be right there with whoever, Shane Steichen, Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year. I mean, he should be right there.
Yeah, and D'Amico Ryans is also there in the mix as well for the Texans. The thing about Njoku is he's been doing it all over, like short screen passes, and then he's been catching some bombs from Flacco as well. In the 3 games with Flacco, David Njoku has seen a 21% target share. The thing is, that's like really good, or it's solid, but the raw volume, 28 targets, like Evan said, they've just been throwing so much. Browns get at Texans versus Jets to finish the fantasy season. Broncos went to Detroit on Saturday night and got absolutely trucked 42-17. It just felt like they were running really hot and they got exposed here. No one had a usable fantasy game for the Broncos, although I did notice that little Jordan Humphrey caught a touchdown. Marvin Mims did not. So is what it is. Any thoughts on Broncos getting laid out in Detroit?
Didn't have any really big takeaways. I did see Sean Payton chewing out Russell Wilson on the sideline, and then Sean Payton said afterward, "It's no big deal." But yeah, I mean, they were just, they've been living off of turnover luck.
Yeah.
During their hot run, and yeah, you're right. I think they got exposed by a really good offense in Detroit.
Yeah, that's why we were trying to look at the EPA stuff without turnovers included. So yeah, we're just working on a bunch of that stuff. Stay tuned. Texans. So I thought it was going to be Davis Mills that was going to start, but I actually think they probably made the right move. Case Keenum is probably better than Davis Mills. Case Keenum starts this game and wins in Tennessee without Nico Collins, without Tank Dell, Noah Brown. Somebody played, I got like a high stakes head-to-head in DFS, and someone played Noah Brown against me, and I was like, this is going to be all right. Noah Brown's not going to give me the blade. Noah Brown gave me the blade, 882-1. Guy just continues to ball when he gets chances. Any thoughts on Case Keenum here? And if you think CJ Stroud will be back next week, just general Texan stuff.
I know that as of Monday, CJ Stroud was still in concussion protocol and still experiencing symptoms. So I'm not sure, but I agree with you. Obviously, I think that the Texans got a game. They were 3.5 point road dogs here.
Yeah.
This was a really big win for them. I think that if they had lost this game, their season might be like over, but it's definitely not right now. They're back up to 8-6 on the season. Singletary was outstanding in both the run and the passing game. He had a big time 41-yard catch and run as a receiver, finished with 449 receiving on 5 targets and ran for 26. He rushed 26 times for 121 yards. He has iced Dameon Pierce, who played like 4 snaps in this game. He's been almost completely phased out. They love the way that Devin Singletary executes that outside zone scheme. And, I expect Devin Singletary to get another big workload this week.
Yeah. Snaps, like Evan said, 58-4 Singletary ahead of Dameon Pierce. I think just a reminder that running back is replaceable. Like Dameon Pierce was good as a rookie, I thought, really good. But running back, it's just so replaceable by injury, by stuff that happened to Pierce. If Dameon Pierce was a really good rookie wide receiver, there's no way he'd be being replaced. Like, no way. But, yeah. Jacksonville. Jaguars just could not run the ball in this game against the Ravens whatsoever. And so when you can't run the ball, Christian Kirk's not out there. Calvin Ridley remains a mess. Zay Jones left with a hamstring pull. It was just a really, really tough spot. Trevor Lawrence is in the concussion protocol right now. Jaguars feel like it's coming apart a little bit for them. Evan, any thoughts on Jaguars' loss to the Ravens?
Yeah, it does feel like it's coming apart. Zay Jones' injury looked bad.
Yeah.
Too. So I think we might see a lot of Jamal Agnew this week. If Trevor Lawrence can't go, then it would be CJ Beathard. ETN has really slowed down since, for a lot of the season, looking like the number 2 overall fantasy back. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see on Trevor Lawrence status. I assume he'll get cleared here, but something to watch out for. Of course, his backup is the beathard himself, CJ Beathard. Chiefs. The final score looks like the Chiefs played well. It honestly wasn't that easy. I mean, it was only 14-10 at halftime. Chiefs were winning, you know? It's like this offense is just scary. Now, the big news was Rashee Rice. Finally, it took until week 15, but we finally did it, Evan. 95% of the routes for Rashee Rice in this game. Dude looks awesome. Took a long time, but Mahomes trusts him. They feature him in the red zone. They ran some like trick play for him at the goal line. He's just such an awesome asset to have right now. Evan, what do you think of Chiefs win up in Foxborough?
Yeah, over the last 4 weeks, Rashee Rice is the number 3 overall fantasy receiver behind only Deebo Samuel and CeeDee Lamb. Sky Moore went on injured reserve with a knee injury. So those snaps will be, occupied by other players, probably Rashee Rice. And then Isaiah Pacheco is due back from shoulder surgery this week, and he should retake that backfield. He had really been coming on before that. So I think that he retakes the backfield. Travis Kelce only 5 for 28 on 7 targets after proposing to Taylor Swift.
This is the same shoulder, by the way, that Pacheco had off-season shoulder surgery on. So now he's had an off-season procedure on it, and there must have been some scope or something like that he just had. He's only missing 2 games here, but still a little worried. I mean, he runs so hard to have repeated shoulder issues already.
If I recall correctly, one of the reasons that he fell in the draft, and there were a variety of reasons. He fumbled too much in college. It was like he got benched at one point. But if I recall correctly, he had medical flags as well related to the shoulder. So, this kind of reminds you of Dalvin Cook a little bit. But I mean, it's like a chronic thing.
By the way, CH had some big plays for them in this game. I mean, he turned 13 carries and 4 targets into 101 yards and a touchdown. Had a really good touchdown catch. So, yeah, there's a lot of CH haters out there. I don't think CH is good. I'd rather have Pacheco, et cetera. But, when you play with Patrick Mahomes and you're a feature back, you can have big fantasy games, and that's what happened. Las Vegas. I mean, they just smoked the Chargers. We already talked about this at the very top, but Vegas puts up 63 points, a franchise record in their Thursday Night Football win. No Josh Jacobs in this game, so you get Zamir White. 21 opportunities, scores a touchdown. You get a big Devontae Adams game. You also get big games from Trey Tucker and Michael Mayer. But really, the Chargers just laid down flat and let the Raiders roll all over them. I do think Antonio Pierce has them playing well and playing hard. You got to give the guy credit, man. He came into a tough situation, and they've played much better since Pierce took over. Any thoughts on Raiders steamrolling of the Chargers?
Yeah, could not agree more about Antonio Pierce. I mean, they should give him a long look to be their head coach next year. He's done that good of a job. One thing I also like about Antonio Pierce is that he was asked, well, first of all, they had scored like 17 or fewer points in like 5 straight games. So this 62-point explosion came out of nowhere. He was asked what happened after the game, and he chalked it up to Michael Mayer just leveling Khalil Mack on the first play of the game. And he was like, that set the tone for us, and it was all us the rest of the way, baby. And, so I really like that. Michael Mayer, 4 for 39 and a touchdown and a bunch of killer blocks. Stud.
We'll see what happens with Josh Jacobs. Kind of seems to me like he'll be back this week, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's the feeling that I get.
Patriots hung in there against the Chiefs, like I just mentioned, ended up losing 27-17. The Zeke stuff, he got 6 targets and 11 carries. He'll be more efficient, I think, in games when he's not facing the Chiefs. But the gut punch for Zeke's fantasy day was that Kevin Harris got the touchdown. And the whole thesis of the Zeke play was that he'll be the goal line back. He's going to get 95, 96% of the running back touches and snaps at least. To lose the touchdown to Kevin Harris really hurt Zeke's fantasy day. But yeah, usage is going to be there. I don't know that Ramondre Stevenson's going to be back this year at all. And what do you think of Zappy and Zeke hanging in there against the Chiefs?
Zappy, 180 yards on 31 attempts. Not great. I mean, the passing game is it's not going to be reliable in any way. That's why, having confidence in a guy like Pop Douglas, I mean, it's hard to have confidence in him. It does seem like Zappy likes throwing the ball to Hunter Henry, who had 2 touchdowns in the previous week and went and had 9 targets, a team-high 9 targets, 7 for 66 and a TD here.
But hurt his knee. I mean, it's scary.
Oh, did he? Yeah. I missed that.
He left in like the third or fourth quarter with a knee injury, didn't return. So
They also lost Cole Strange, who had been like probably their best offensive lineman, to a knee injury, and their left tackle Trent Brown missed this game. So injury troubles to an offense that is already one of the worst in the league.
speaking of worst offenses in the league, we'll go to the Jets now. They get blanked in Miami 30-0. Jets are officially eliminated from the playoffs. I'll get to the Aaron Rodgers story in a second, but in this one, they lost Zach Wilson to a concussion. Trevor Siemian comes in and throws a couple interceptions. Just really brutal for Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. You know, I still think those guys were the right picks before the season. If Aaron Rodgers did not go down on game one, I really think Breece and Garrett Wilson would have had huge years. But when you have Siemian and Zach Wilson in there, you're going to have air balls. And at the worst possible time, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson airballed for their fantasy owners. The Aaron Rodgers stuff, I don't think he's coming back. You know, he's been cleared. They say he maybe could come back. They've been eliminated from the playoffs now. I don't think he's going to play. But yeah, anything for you on the Jets, Evan, their latest loss this time down in Miami.
Aaron Rodgers was on McAfee earlier today and essentially confirmed that he's not coming back. Like he said, he needs 3 or 4 more weeks, and there's not that much time left. So the Jets also said that if Zach Wilson, who is now in the concussion protocol, is not cleared, it'll be Trevor Siemian in week 16. Garrett Wilson, the Dolphins were without Xavier Howard in this game. So what they did is they stuck Jalen Ramsey on Garrett Wilson, and that did not go well for Garrett Wilson. That's all I got.
Yeah. I do think like Rodgers seems really likely to play next year. You know, if he's can play in a month, then obviously he can play and hopefully be himself next year. I could see them making a big splash, like trying to get Devontae Adams or T. Higgins or, you know, someone to just try to get a loaded offense for Aaron Rodgers. And
yeah, I mean, I think the front office has to be a little worried. The head coach needs to be a little worried. I mean, his record as the Jets head coach is not good, Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
And they have gone 13 straight seasons without making the playoff, the Jets.
It's a lot. Steelers. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, Evan, but they need Kenny Pickett back. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky is worse. I thought they'd be like kind of a wash going from Kenny Pickett to Mitchell Trubisky. It's not been a wash. Mitch has been way worse. They get trucked at Indy. It's either going to be Pickett or Mason Rudolph, I think I read, which is they're down bad also. Anyways, Evan, what do you think of Steelers really face planting against Indy on that Saturday game?
Yeah, they pretty much said that it's going to be Mason Rudolph this week, which made a bunch of Steelers beat writers really happy because the Steelers beat writers have this strange obsession with Mason Rudolph. Like they think he should be like an NFL starter or something. Yeah, I mean, Trubisky got benched. It was more Jaylen Warren than Najee Harris in this game, although I think that was at least a little bit induced by the game script.
Yeah.
They face the Bengals and the Seahawks over the next 2 weeks. Those are the notes that I have about the Steelers. They're also really banged up on defense. Micah Fitzpatrick's not going to play this week, and neither is DeMonte KZ, who, due to illegal hits, is suspended for the remainder of the season.
Would you upgrade or downgrade Pickens and Deontay Johnson with Mason Rudolph in there?
Go fish.
I mean, it's all the same, you know. I said that before, and I guess it's not all the same. I guess I would consider. I thought Pickett and Trubisky were the same. I was wrong. I think Trubisky and Mason Rudolph are the same, but I could be wrong there too. Mason Rudolph could be worse than Trubisky, which would be scary. Last one we're going to get to here today is the Tennessee Titans, and this was it. I mean, they needed this game, a home game against Case Keenum. They needed this game to stay alive in the playoffs. They lose it. I need to check my calendar, Evan. I believe it's December, and Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 9 yards and 0 touchdowns in a game that they got eliminated from the playoffs and was likely the end of his Titans career. I mean, tough way to go out. And Will Levis suffered a high ankle sprain. I mean, just a nightmare day for the Titans. What do you think of their embarrassing loss to Case Keenum?
Yeah, and Ben Arthur, who covers the Titans, said on Monday that he wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Will Levis again until 2024. Yeah, man, I had a good team in DFS this week. I played James Cook. but I played Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And I ate it for that. But I mean, the offensive line is just brutal in Tennessee. The Titans are now officially out of playoff contention. We
Yes.
might see Ryan Tannehill the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any point in Derrick Henry playing. I mean, he's probably going for his career stuff.
Yeah.
But
I,
I don't know.
I actually think Derrick Henry can still help a team. Like, I know I've been
Yeah.
made a lot of jokes about him. He's actually played pretty well this year. Like, if he was the power complement to Tony Pollard in Dallas, like, that seems like a good fit to me.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think Tony Pollard would probably be better off in kind of the going back to satellite role anyways. So yeah, we'll see. But on these teams that just get eliminated from the playoffs and have a lot of veterans like Tennessee, I just get queasy about playing them in DFS because you can see weird shifts in player usage once a team is officially eliminated from the playoffs and they have a bunch of veterans. So be careful for that. We'll try to bake that in as much as we can for the projections. Before we talk on Friday night, that is going to do it for this team by team week 16 preview. I appreciate you all being here. Hope you're still alive in your season-long league. Hope you're still grinding DFS. Hope you're still alive in some best ball stuff. For Evan, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan. Feel better, buddy. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.